Federal government looking to lend a helping hand to house-hungry millennials, but not everyone's convinced that the first-time homebuyers incentive is actually going to work out the way the feds are hoping. Joining us now is Will Dunning, Chief Economist at Mortgage Professionals Canada. Good to see you again, Will.
Glad to be here.
All right, so now people can actually apply for this. We're going to see what the uptake is, but there's been a lot of criticism as to how far this incentive will go to actually helping people, and the government says they're trying to help people.
Yes, and there are a number of ways we can approach this. We can talk about the numbers who might actually benefit from it. The government says it's expecting 100,000 people to take advantage of this program. But if you look at, first look at the numbers, that's an average of 12,500 per client. And that doesn't seem likely. Even in the government's own examples, they're looking at 20 to 40,000. So the number of people who can take advantage within that budget might actually be 40, 50, or 60,000, not the 100,000.
Okay, so they might fall short of that original aim of helping 100,000 Canadians. One of the biggest criticisms of this incentive is the fact that people who are having the hardest time, generally, for the most part, they're in the big urban centers where the prices ran up before the big cool down. They really didn't come down enough to get them into that house. And the way this is structured, this incentive, is really not going to do much to get them into a house. That
may be deliberate. They may be wanting a program that will work best in the lower cost communities and not in the areas that were more expensive and more heated. I mean, obviously, the government does not want to heat up the market any more than it was in the past. So that from their point of view, it may be very useful if Toronto and Vancouver do not respond to this program. They haven't said so, but that may be the case.
That's interesting, because then you would think, then who are you really trying to help? Because these other markets, not that people shouldn't avail themselves if they live in these other markets, but when you get outside, even areas like Ottawa or Montreal, you sort of shudder when you think what you can get for a single-family home in that market.
Well, another issue is how many people will actually be enticed by the program to buy a home. You can actually buy a home quite readily without a home. In fact, you can buy less of a home under the program than you can buy without the program.
All that capping, you can't make more than 120 combined. It can't be 4 times this.
Right. So you could actually buy a home now and qualify for 4.5 or 5 times your income. But if you're limited to 4 times your income, it means you have to reduce your expectations of what you think you can buy and afford and be comfortable with by 10 to 20%. So, are a lot of people going to decide, I'd like this house, but this gives me a small financial benefit, I'll take this one? Some will, but not that many. Most will go with, what's my preferred option as the first criterion for making a decision about what to buy.
What do we make of it, as well as you take a look at how it's structured about the home equity part of it? The fact that it's shared equity, and people need to understand, well, Ottawa is sort of in bed with you in your house.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Well, 2 issues there. I mean, you can run the numbers, and you can see that in most reasonable scenarios, you'd be better off taking the program if you're comfortable with the design. But the question is the design as you're talking about. We did a survey. We surveyed almost 2,000 Canadians, and 44% of them are resistant, quite highly resistant, to sharing equity with the government. Only 27% said, yeah, I could live with that. So there's a majority to begin with to say, no, I'm not going to take part in this program because of that feature.
Yeah, if I win big, I don't want to have to give a certain amount of it 5, 10 years later.
Well, even if you don't win big, it's just an uncomfortable feeling for a lot of people. The government owns part of my house.
All right, so if this incentive, you've run the numbers, you don't think it's going to be effective, what should the government be doing then in terms of affordability for young people? Because we still know that's a problem.
Well, there are lots of possibilities. The one I personally like, and I think makes sense, is 30-year amortization as an alternative. It has about the same income in terms of outcome in terms of people's monthly costs of buying a home. So why doesn't the government offer people a choice? You can have one of these programs. You can do the first-time buyer, and government will share the equity, or you can do 30-year amortization, and you have all the equity, and they're about a wash for you. People with the benevolent government, why don't you choose which one you'd like? Because we think these are both great options. So that's what I'd like to see the government say.
What do you think policymakers then would want to stay away from this? Because there was a time, and it started under the late Jim Flaherty, where they said, okay, we got to start reining back and tightening up these mortgage market rules to start to rein in what we're seeing. So we'd be going back to where we used to be, basically.
Let's try to read between the lines in the program design. Maybe the government doesn't really want a lot of people to take advantage of this program. CMHC said the price impact of the program would be to raise prices by 0.2 to 0.4%. That's tiny.
Yeah, that basically tells you they don't expect very much
They're
demand.
expecting very, very little incremental impact from the program. So maybe it's by design that they're designing a program that not very many people will be enticed to take advantage of.
The stress tested, to your point of view, has that been a bigger impediment in terms of getting the market back on its feet? Or, because Toronto seems to be recovering. We got the Vancouver numbers today. Prices are still down. Sales are still well below the 10-year average.
Okay. First issue is, interest rates have fallen. We have a very strong economy. It might be weakening, but we've come through a period of 2.5 years of very rapid job creation. We have very low interest rates. We have very rapid population growth. Housing demand right now in Canada should be incredibly strong. So housing activity is improving a little bit, but it's still far below where it should be. And that is testimony to how much of an impediment the stress tests have been to prevent people who could be buying from actually buying. So the stress tests are still a big deal. They're being masked by what's happening in the broader economy and interest rates. But the impact of the stress test is still to disqualify anywhere up to 20% of potential first-time buyers who they would feel, I'm in a good position to buy a home. They cannot buy a home because of the stress tests.
It's always great to have you on and get your insights, Will.
Very glad to be here.
It was Will Dunning, Chief Economist at Mortgage Professionals Canada.